from the brothers here? Pass me the thingy back. Shake on. Paper. أحمد وين الخاتم يا أخي؟ الخاتم إن شاء الله
ما رسيتك
حياكم بارك الله فيكم. تزوجت؟
لا
شكلك يعني
مخطوب.
عرفت إنه في شيء صح؟ وجهك يعني في نور. الله أكبر. طيب بارك الله فيكم. خيرا إن شاء الله. الله يوفق. حمزة تفضل.
بارك الله فيك.
فيكم بارك الله.
How to remove waswasa in the back of your head?
How to remove waswasa in the back of your head?
No.
Allahu Akbar. You got to remove from the front of your head as well. Naam. You got to remove it from the side of your head, etc. Waswas or waswasa, unfortunately, is a very, very widespread problem. And is one of, I would say, one of the issues that I deal with the most, more than marriage and divorce, more than marriage counseling, is waswas. If I had $1 for every time someone contacted me because they were suffering from waswas, I'll be a very wealthy man. So it's a very widespread common problem, and it's a very old problem. And the cures then are going to be the cures now. The reasons behind waswas then are the reasons now, but just amplified, as we had explained on Saturday night when we were in North Carolina, with regards to do the youth face new challenges, or are they the same challenges but just turned up, amplified, on steroids? Understand? So with that being said, the first step, in my humble opinion, from getting rid of waswas is not to get rid of it. And that's because you only get rid of something that exists. You're only throwing someone out of a place who's in that place. So the first step of waswas is to realize that waswas is fake. It's false. It doesn't exist. It isn't real. Whether you call it a figure of your imagination, a trick from the shaitan, mental illness, whatever the cause behind it, it doesn't exist. You are a Muslim. You know how to make wudu. You know how to pray. There's nothing impure on your clothes. You did not break your wudu. It's a fake, false signal that is sent to you, or from the shaitan, or from both. And it gets you to consider it and validate it. And once you consider it and validate it and look at it as being something important and real, then you get trapped and enveloped and swallowed whole. Versus a person saying, get out of here. You're fake. You don't exist. You're not even real. Give you an example of this. There was a sister once who contacted me. She was suffering from very bad waswas, and she had, issues. And she said, listen to this, just to get to the extent of what I'm trying to say, that one day, she said that she left Islam. So I asked her, how did you leave Islam? She said, I didn't want to be a Muslim anymore. I wasn't a Muslim anymore. I was a munafiq, etc., etc. So, okay, what happened? She said one day, she called out and she screamed out her kufr words, not my words. Allah prevent me from saying this. She said, oh Allah, you don't exist, you're not real. That's what she said. So just stop and think about that statement now. If Allah didn't exist, and if he wasn't real, who was she calling out to? Make sense or not? She's rejecting someone that she says doesn't exist, isn't real. You get the point or not? The trick of the shaitan. So obviously the sister, she said, I came back to Islam, so on and so forth, and I look how stupid that was. Why am I calling out to someone who? So the waswas is a trick, it's fake, it's not real. It isn't true, it isn't valid. And the more attention you give it, the more worry you pay attention to it, the more, but maybe, I'm afraid, I'm scared, but sheikh, the bigger it becomes. So know that. That's the first rule of waswas, is to show it no respect. But what if I did break my wudu? Pray. But sheikh, what if my wudu? Bismillah. But sheikh, what if my wife is divorced? What if she isn't my wife? Bismillah. Move forward. Every time you stop and think about it, you validate it and you make it strong. All right, so that's the first rule. That's all I'll say right now. And that's more than enough. As we said before, for brothers and sisters who want to contact us, inshallah, scan the QR code, check out our websites, HadithDiscipleshop.com, bidnillahi ta'ala. If you need to ask personal questions regarding waswas, if you need counseling, if you have suicidal thoughts, so on and so forth. May Allah help all of us. Ameen. Fadl akhi.
For the hadith that mentions if a man raises two upright daughters, there'll be a means for him to enter Jannah. Can this hadith also be used for the mother who aids the father, or is this awesome for the father only?
With regards to looking after orphans, and with regards to looking after two daughters, is it specific to the father, to the man? Not necessarily. However, the man is presupposed to be the earner. He's the breadwinner. He brings home the halal bacon. So that hadith is addressing him because he's supposed to be willing to pay the bills and to take care of things. Let alone the fact that in most cases, it's going to be more difficult in a society that looks down on girls for the father than the mother. A man has children. You don't have a son. You're 30, 40, 50. You don't have one son. All you have is daughters. You have all of these girls. They're not going to be warriors. They're not going to be imams. They can't carry on your lineage. They're going to take on someone else's name, so on and so on and so forth. So it's going to be more shameful for the man in that society to have girls than the mother. So he's bearing that societal shame in most cases more. Understand? If the daughters turn out to be unchaste or whatever the case may be, in most cases he's going to be more shamed. Your daughters are out here running the streets. You understand? But it doesn't mean that the mother is not going to receive any reward for the difficulties and hardships. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Up here.
What are some of the fadail of the month of Muharram, and what are some of the acts of worship that we should do in this month?
Jazakallah khairan. The month of Muharram is the month of Allah. Plain and simple. Shahrullahi al-Muharram. And to Allah belongs all of the months. But this month is given that specific nickname and that specific title because of its importance. Just as it's called Al-Muharram. And there are other months which are these sacred months in which there isn't supposed to be fighting. Right? So why is it called Shahrullah? And why is it called Al-Muharram? Even though the other months are the months of Allah, and the other months that are the sacred months are sacred months because of its virtue. That's first and foremost. Fasting in abundance. One of the best deeds to do, and the different hadiths regarding the virtue of fasting in the Muharram. And the Prophet ﷺ's habits concerning fasting in the month of Muharram. Now, last but not least, ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ فَلَا تَظْلِمُوا فِيهِنَّ أَنفُسَكُمْ. Wrong not yourselves during these sacred months. And you're not supposed to wrong yourself during any month, but specifically during the sacred months. And from the most sacred of those sacred months is Muharram. Last but not least is the beginning of a new year. The beginning of a new year. How many New Year signs did you see? Did you see any in the Muslim communities? You saw some? Alhamdulillah. Did you see any, Talib?
Yeah,
Saw any? Sean? You saw some?
Yeah, somebody texted me.
Somebody texted you. How many things did you see? Lights or parties or...
I never seen it.
Yeah? It's unfortunate. It's the beginning of the Islamic year. So a fresh start. A new beginning. A new page. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Fadli ya akhi.
There's a hadith in Sahih Muslim where the Prophet made dua for rain with his palms facing the ground. So should this be done like this or like this? And when should this be done?
Right. The Prophet ﷺ, when he made the dua of istisqa, seeking rain, asking Allah for rain, he did different things. فَقَلَبَ رِدَأَهُ. His clothing, he flipped it. He inverted it. يعني تفاؤلا. With expectations and optimism of the things changing. So right now it's dry, there's drought, there's death, there's famine. Inshallah things will what? Change. So that's the wisdom why he did that. And of course you have the option for many things. When making dua for al-istisqa, the prayer, the khutbah, raising the hands, not raising the hands, when to do it, so on and so forth. These are options. And inshallah ta'ala, if you want to stick to the steps, then you're going to follow the hadith. When the Prophet ﷺ raised his hands, when he said this in his khutbah, when they went out to make the salah, so on and so forth. You're going to stick with the text if you want to do it what? To the T. And if not, the generality of asking Allah for rain and making istighfar, whereas the sins are reasons behind lack of rain and drought and famine. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Fadl.
In terms of the conditions put into a marriage contract, if one of those conditions are not fulfilled, is the contract automatically voided, or is there a...
If there are conditions made for the marriage contract, and those conditions are ignored or neglected or violated, does this render the contract null and void? هل يبطل العقد? Not necessarily. Rather, the شرط يعني الإخلال بشرط من شروط العقد بعبارة سهلة دين في حقك. أنت أخلقت بهذا الشيء لم توفي به تزوجتها خلاص اتصلت بها وهي قد اتصلت بك ودخلت وانتهى لكن باقي عليك هذا الشيء لم توفي به يعني you didn't fulfill this condition that she asked for that she stipulated, so there's a sin involved and it's something that you owe her, but it doesn't mean that the contract is false. Like شروط الصلاة مثلا الإخلال بشرط من شروط الصلاة بمعنى إيش؟ إبطال الصلاة. الصلاة لم تنعقد أصلا لم تنعقد. أنت معي؟ يختلف. والله تعالى أعلم. From online.
DJ London, UK. With regards to the ayah فَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ, does that include to speak properly with clear and loud voice and using someone's linguistic skills?
Speak of the favors of your Lord. It depends on your station and your status. If you're a speaker, a public speaker, if you're a role model or an influencer, then you should be speaking clearly no matter what. And you should be speaking properly no matter what. And you can speak proper even when you speak slang. There's a way of speaking proper even when you speak slang. When you speak slang, and there's a way of speaking clearly even when you speak slang. So, the power of words if you have that status. As far as like me, I'm an average Joe. I don't have that status, so on and so forth. You don't have to tell everybody and announce and raise your voice about all of your blessings. But the people that you come in contact with, you say what Allah has done for you, what Allah has given you, not out of pride or boasting or bragging, but based off of that ayah. Wallahu ta'ala alam.
Bronx, TA Bronx, New York. I have come across a narration that mentions at the recitation of فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ that it is encouraged to respond saying that بِشَيْءٍ مِّن نِعْمِكَ رَبَّنَا نُكَذِّبُ فَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ. Is this authentic to do this?
Right. Those hadiths regarding that are well known. And the story behind that with regards to the jinn and how the jinn responded, and they had better response than the Sahaba. Is the hadith sound and authentic? Lam aqul hada. That's a different discussion. Wallahu ta'ala alam. The meaning is sound no matter what. For sure the meaning is what? It's sound. None of the favors of our Lord will we deny, will we reject. That's the sound meaning. But is it authentically proven that you say that directly afterwards? That's a different story. But there are hadiths that are well known on that. Wallahu ta'ala alam.
MB, Marietta, Georgia. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. Is it okay to call someone Your Highness jokingly or in court to address the judge? Barakallahu feek.
As far as calling someone Your Highness, joking around, then it depends. Somebody may be carrying themselves like Aywa. So you say it to them joking or mocking or whatever the case may be. Al-Muhim is a joke is a joke. What's important is there are conditions for jokes in Islam. And from those conditions, as the joke has to be accurate, has to be real. You cannot break a person's back or embarrass them, shame them, so on and so forth. Al-Muhim, can you say Your Highness to a judge? If your freedom depends on it, you better say it. Okay? The concept of court and the concept of man-made laws and the concept of this qadi is ruling with other than what Allah has sent down. Are you even allowed to go into the courthouse? Are you even allowed to stand up for this taghut and this taghut system? But that's easier said than done when he's saying, do you acknowledge this, Mr. Such? Yes, Your Highness, or Your Honor. Method. You get the point I'm trying to make? So if you're forced to go to court and you're forced to address someone by their title, fear Allah the best way you can. But the whole entire legal system, just like the whole entire financial system, taxes, so on and so forth, it's a problem. It's a mushkila. You get the point I'm trying to make? Standing up for someone when they enter the room. It's a what? It's a problem. honoring someone who's publicly disobeying the law is a what? A big problem. Wallahu alam.
AQ, Ontario, Canada. How do I find the courage to work? I still live with my family, but I'm just lazy, and I don't have many friends as well.
طيب, you gotta seek Allah's refuge from laziness. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-hammi wal-hazn wal-ajzi wal-kasal. You have to seek Allah's refuge from laziness and lethargy. Last but not least, you have to seek Allah's refuge from nifaq. ومن صفات المنافقين الكسل التكاسل فثبتهم. Allah made them heavy and sluggish, and it was said to them, "اقعدوا مع القاعدين." Stay back. You can't go out and fight anymore. They were lazy, they didn't want to go out, and Allah punished them by putting that heaviness upon them. So you have to seek Allah's refuge, you have to seek Allah's protection from that laziness. Last but not least, you have to realize nothing is going to get done by you being lazy, of deen or dunya. Alright? And as far as not having a lot of friends, what's important is put yourself in the right situation, and someone will find you, come across you, that shares interests that you have, inshallah ta'ala. Wallahu alam. Hamza.
Assalamu alaikum. What is the manners of visiting someone's house when their family passed away?
Visiting someone's house when their family passes away. You should bring them food if you can. Try to find an appropriate time. Make dua for the deceased. Make dua for the family. That Allah give them ease and give them patience and remove their sadness and their pain. And give them advice. Don't overburden them and don't stay too long. Wallahu alam. If you have the ability to enjoy the good and forbid the evil, you do that as well. Wallahu alam. Fadl akhi.
Sorry. Is it permissible to recite other than the Quran, like melodiously, like a hadith and mutun? Can you recite them melodiously?
Is it permissible to recite mutun or hadith melodiously? Yes, it is. There's nothing wrong with that. Wallahu alam. There's nothing wrong with that, inshallah. Especially if it helps you memorize it. There's nothing wrong with that. Khairan, inshallah. Wallahu alam. Faddal. Okay. And next shay talib, faddal.
So, what is the proper understanding of the report that Abu Lahab gets a lighter punishment on Mondays?
طيب ايش في يعني؟
There's allegedly a report from a tabi that
A report from a tabi'i. طيب.
That one of Abu Lahab's family members saw in a dream that he was in a bad state, and he's given something to drink on Mondays because he was.
Al-Muhim, a narration from a tabi'i is not a narration from a sahabi. A narration from a sahabi isn't always like a narration from the Prophet ﷺ, especially when it comes to the unseen. There lies no doubt Abu Talib's punishment will be lessened, and the Prophet ﷺ has a special shafa'ah for Abu Talib. That's ثابت في الصحيحين. لا خفاء لا غبار على هذا. As far as it being on Mondays, coming from the dream of a tabi'i, so on and so forth, that isn't sufficient to establish a ruling of the unseen. Jazakallahu khairan. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Al-Muhim, his punishment will be lessened. Faddal. Abir. Ayakum. Round 2.
UM, Brooklyn, New York. Assalamu alaikum.
Look at that foam. MashaAllah. The froth. Crest. It's serious. That's thick. That's like what? A good inch and a half, huh? Asli? Asli? Alhamdulillah. This good? Alhamdulillah. طيب. جزاكم الله خيرا. بسم الله. تفضل.
UM, Brooklyn, New York. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, ya Shaykh. What is the ruling on the one who found out her father might not be her father, and her husband is telling her to stop speaking to him?
Someone who finds out that the father may not be the father and stop speaking to him. Al-Muhim, the people should stay away from this. He's either your father or he isn't. End of discussion. If he's your father, if you thought or felt he was your father all these years, he's your father until proven. There is no may not. That's number one. What is the point of even investigating that years after a person's life? Unless there was something that was shady, or as the brother said in the UK, dodgy from the get-go. That's number one. Last but not least, for argument's sake, the man isn't this woman's biological father. Why did she think that he was her biological father unless he was a part of her life for some time? So if he was a part of this woman's life for some time, there's no doubt that this man, what? قد أحسن إليها في وقت من الأوقات. There was a time in which he what? He was good to her. He was benevolent to her. Okay? Whether a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So if he was good to her and if he was benevolent to her, she owes him something. And that is basic decency of saying thank you. He doesn't have to be a mahram for her to speak to him. He doesn't have to be a father for her to say, Assalamu alaikum, how you doing? Jazakallah khairan. Here's a gift, so on and so forth. Touching, uncovering, that's a different story. Laughing and joking, traveling alone is a different what? Different story. But for sure, that man at worst is a father figure to that woman. So you tell your wife, stay away from this man, don't speak to him, treat him like a complete stranger. And there was a point in time in which she thought that that man was her father. That's a little backwards to me. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.
AM Schenectady, New York. This mechanic wants to charge me $200 to diagnose my car. The check engine light is on. I have a Mercedes Benz. Is that too much?
Allahu a'lam. I'm not a mechanic. I don't rush.
PD, Philadelphia, PA, Pennsylvania. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. I am new Shahada as of June 1st. The first thing I was told outside of learning the basics is sit at the foot of a teacher. How can I become a direct student of you?
Jazakallah khairan. May Allah bless you. Congratulations and welcome to Islam. Beautiful, beautiful news. I'm so happy for you. And I hope that you have a very long life of being a strong, positive Muslim. Allahumma ameen. One of the first pieces of advice that I received was to sit at the foot of a teacher, to learn. Whoever gave you that advice gave you good advice. Islam and knowledge go hand in hand, inseparable. So that's beautiful advice. As far as being a direct student of me, then inshallah ta'ala, you watching the classes, learning, listening, taking notes, you'll be a student of mine. If you wanted to study with me in person, you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome, inshallah ta'ala. Wherever or however that will be, you're more than welcome, inshallah.
SS Boston, Maryland. Salam Sheikh. If you donate on behalf of someone, you have a copy of the reward.
If you donate on behalf of someone, you have a copy of the reward. You get a reward, inshallah, for being a part of the good deed. But it isn't your donation. So it's a bit different. Wallahu a'lam. Fadl akhi.
So when making dua with your palms facing the ground, is it below your head or above your head?
Is it below your head?
Like in this manner?
Okay.
Or above your head?
Right. There are different descriptions of when the Prophet raised his hands. Some descriptions the scholars clearly agree upon. Okay, he raised his hands, his ridat fell, or we saw his armpits. And then there are other times in which it wasn't that high. It wasn't a distressed dua. So once again, those things are going to be optional. And you're going to stick to the text and the wording of the hadith if and when you've come across it. So if you came across that the Prophet raised his hands above his head, that's what you're going to do. And if it says that he raised his hands, he turned his hands backwards, then you're going to do whatever you have the option and the ability to do. Because it's room. Understand? If you've read something specific, clearly, then you stick to that. Understand? Like, other than putting the hands on the navel or the chest or the belly. If you read a hadith and you consider this hadith to be sound, that the Prophet put his hands on his belly button, then that's what you're going to do. His navel. If you read a hadith, the Prophet put his beneath his navel, and that's sound to you, then you want to what? Stick to that. If you read a hadith, or you have the understanding that it's an option, as long as the right hand is on the left, then you are what? Free to place them in that general what? Area. You understand? That's the rule with regards to that, and any other issue like this. Clear? Wallahu a'lam. I think it's time to stop now. بإذن الله تعالى جزاكم الله خيرا صلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا وإمامنا محمد